So, although the rate is an important metric because it relates to cost increases for your resident customers, as we reviewed this information, we thought a more relevant matrix was the actual increase in solid waste costs. So, looking at the solid waste cost, your cost is composed of three components. There's the collection cost, and that's the money that goes to ecology. You have your disposal cost, and that's the money that goes to the South Bay Waste Management Authority, and then your franchise fees, which comes to the city or the town of Atherton. What this chart shows is a comparison of costs for 2010 and 2011, and what it shows that your collection costs will increase by $300,000, which represents a 24.6% increase. Your disposal costs is increasing by $167,000, which represents a 27% increase. And so the bottom line is that your total solid waste cost for 2011 is increasing about a little over $500,000, which represents a 25% increase over 2010. What this chart shows is these are all the cost increases for all the agencies within the South Bay Waste Management Authority. And as you can see, every city experiences cost increases. And that's not surprising. One of the significant changes that occurs this year is you're changing service providers. It's part of the new franchise agreement. So it's not surprising that the collection costs are increasing. That's partly due to the transition to a new solid waste provider, because they're required to have capital expenditures of approximately $57 million for the purchase of new vehicles and carts. And that capital equipment depreciation and interest costs associated with this capital investment must be recovered through the allocation of these costs to the 12-member agencies of the South Bay Waste Management Agency. So from the new equipment purchases alone, it's reasonable to expect that your solid waste costs will increase. In addition to the new capital expenditures, the new solid waste contract increases some of your service levels, particularly now there are weekly recycling and green waste service as opposed to bi-weekly service under the old contract. So again, the fact that solid waste costs increased for the town of Atherton is not surprising. What was surprising to us is this column here, which is a percent variance column. And how the town of Atherton compared to the rest of the agencies. It was difficult for us to rationalize and comprehend why there was such a wide variance in these cost increases. Again, it's understandable that these costs would increase, but with regards to the capital expenditures and the interest, et cetera, but that's something that's going to be applied to everybody. So then the question is, why still was the percent increase in the town of Atherton 25%? So as a result of that, and because of our these issues and concerns, we contacted Ecology, and want to also say that Ecology has been very responsive in providing information, answering all of our questions with regards to the costs. And what we learned was that specific to the town of Atherton, some of the reasons for the higher solid waste costs include the lack of commercial revenues to help offset your residential costs, the size of the lots and street layouts, which increase collection time and operating costs. And as some examples that was cited, in the town of Atherton, in one day they can collect about 458 homes, compared to the city of River City. In one day they can do about 920 homes. The city of Menlo Park, they can collect about 935 homes. So there definitely is more efficiency or productivity in some of the other cities. Due to this productivity or lack of productivity, other information that we received was for the town of Atherton. It costs about $11.30 per week per residential account, as compared to the city of Redwood City and the city of Menlo Park, which is about $5.90 per week per residential account. Another reason for increased costs in the town of Atherton is the amount of green waste collection. The information we were provided there is that, as an example, the city of Atherton generates about 115 pounds a week per home of green waste, as compared to Menlo Park, who generates about 40 pounds per week per home. So maybe with all these factors, it explains why the increase in the city of Atherton is a little over $500,000. It still doesn't really explain percentage-wise, why the county is so much higher than some of your neighboring cities. So this is something that we definitely think is worthwhile spending some additional time to do more thorough independent analysis to come up with, why exactly the costs are what they are, but down at Atherton. And by saying take a little bit more time, we're not suggesting that you delay anything with regards to your rate setting, but over the next 6 to 8 months would be time to take a look at that more closely. With regards to revenue, annual revenues derived from the monthly fees collected from your residential and commercial accounts. And these monthly fees are a product of the rates that as a council you guys set. And then with the existing rates, using the existing rates, the projected 2011 revenue is about $1.9 million. And for the town of Atherton, about 85% of that revenue comes from residential customers and 15% comes from your commercial accounts. One of the things we wanted to point out is that the revenue estimate is just a projection or estimate only. And the actual revenue will depend upon the amount of CAN migration that you see because of the progressive rates that exist in the town of Atherton. There will be people possibly going from the 64-gallon can to the 32-gallon can, which will definitely affect your revenue. And then also the other impact to revenue will be the rate adjustment that as a council you ultimately decide to do. With regards to rates, there are three primary rates are a function of three primary things. One is your cost. The other item is your anticipated revenue, and the third is the amount of reserve that people have, because that reserve can help stabilize and offset some of your rate increases. What this chart shows is the estimated 2011 revenue compared with the estimated 2011 cost, and as you can see, it shows a projected deficit of $600,000 this year. In order to address this deficit, we'll require a 31.6% revenue adjustment to even out the costs and the revenues. And one thing I also want to point out is that the above figures do not include the amount owed or to true up with Allied, which is currently estimated at $334,000. And what the $334,000 represents is additional costs incurred by Allied in 2010, which they have not yet been compensated for yet. This number is an estimate at this time, and the South Bay Waste Management Authority will be doing an independent audit to validate this number, and the results of that audit should be complete by August of this year. This chart here shows the revenue and expense history. The top line is over the last 10 years shows what the revenue has been collected in the town of Atherton. This next line here shows the expenses. As all of you know, back in 2002, the town of Atherton increased rates by 14%. I think that was to address your unlimited green waste program. And then the rates stayed flat for the next 8 years until 2010, last year, when we increased rates 16.9%. What this bottom graph shows here is that as you increased your rates, your revenue was exceeding your costs, so you were building a reserve, and you were able to use that reserve in order to keep your rates flat. But in 2009,